over the weekend, the Taliban, wheeling, dealing, gun running, took over the whole country again. Absolutely pitiful to watch. The Taliban yesterday, here are two photos that we have of them sitting in, I believe this is the presidential palace. And as you can see on the far left, this guy's just taking photos. This is like influencers in the wild for terrorists and criminals. They're literally posing for photos to be posted on the internet as propaganda. Then you can also see we've got a second photo of them sitting there. Guess what? Those are not AK-47s on the right. That looks like an M4 with a collapsible combat butt stock. What? The guy in the middle, he also has an M4. The guy sitting second to the left or standing second to the left, that looks like he also has an M4 or an M16. Where are they getting M4s and M16s? Oh, they have American weapons. That's where they're getting it from. But it's not just rifles. We scoured the internet, the Best Business Show research team. We outsource globally to people all over Twitter. Go find us great information. Go find us great photos and content. And we'll bring it on here and we'll give you credit for it. Election Wizard, literally a guy's name on Twitter. He posted a photo hearing unconfirmed reports that the Taliban has captured several Scan Eagle drones valued at $3.2 million. I have no clue if the Taliban knows how to fly drones, but I know that they got the drones because I saw other videos of them literally driving around with the boxes and the drones in them, literally showing the drones, closing the box and taking off with them. And so we literally have millions of dollars in one piece of equipment falling into the Taliban's hand. But it's not just the drones. I want you to watch this video that we're about to play, and you tell me what is going on. The Taliban has helicopters. They have helicopters now. Here's a video. Oh, there's some more. Yup, we just got some out back too. All right, we're good. They got helicopters. They've got drones. They've got rifles. They got all kinds of equipment. They have Humvees. They have MRAPs, mine-resistant armor-protected vehicles. They have everything that we left behind. I don't give a shit what your politics are. I don't care what you think about this president, the last president, the next president. I don't care about any of it. All I know is that the cost of war is incredibly high. There is no reason why we both gave life of soldiers, of Afghan interpreters, of family members, of defense contractors, etc. And 20 years later, the Taliban, in a span of 2 weeks, literally, the time that the US government told us to flatten the curve, it took for the Taliban to go from the mountains to controlling the entire country. They took the first, second, third, and fourth largest cities in a span of 1 week. Absolutely insane. So what do we do on the Best Business Show? We do exactly what nobody will do anywhere else. Who's making money on all of this? Well, the first problem that we have is nobody can agree on how much money was spent on the war in Afghanistan or the war in Iraq. We've been there for 20 years and our calculators are broken. The US government says that we spent a couple $100 billion in Afghanistan. About $800 billion is their estimate. If you look at, what is it, the war, what is this? The Harvard, it's the Harvard study or Brown? Brown, the total cost of wars is estimated to be about $3 trillion. And then we've seen estimations as high as $6 trillion. Is it 800 billion? Is it 6 trillion? Nobody knows. If we don't know how much money we spent, how can we possibly know where the equipment is, what equipment there is? How will we find it all out? We don't know. But do you know who's been making money? The defense contractors. So the Best Business Show research team dug in. The top 10 defense contractors, here they are. Lockheed Martin makes 96% of their revenue from defense contracting. Raytheon, 65% of their revenue comes from the defense industry. Boeing, over 50% of Boeing comes from the defense industry. Northrop Grumman, 85%. General Dynamics, 79%. And do you know who has 2 of the top 10 defense contractors in the world? China. China North Industries literally has $15 billion in defense revenue, and China State Shipbuilding Corporation has $13 billion in 2020 defense revenue. Absolutely insane to see the size of these businesses. So again, you want to have the conversation no one's going to have? Well, what happened over the last 20 years? The S&P 500 has rallied from, let's see this. This is way too small for my old eyes. From about 116 to 443. Let's call it, give or take, about 400% increase in price. That's the S&P, the benchmark for the stock market. Well, I wanted to go see what the defense contractors do. Lockheed Martin went from $38 to $357. The S&P went up 400%, and Lockheed Martin went up 10x, give or take. They really outperformed the S&P. Well, it wasn't just Lockheed, though. If we then look at Raytheon went from about $21 to today sits at $86. And that is after COVID had a massive negative impact on the business. Still has not reached back to that all-time high at almost $100. 21 to 86 doesn't sound so bad. But then we looked at Boeing, and Boeing got decimated by COVID. But even though it got decimated, it's still gone from $51 to $228. And so ultimately, what we have to remember is that there are multiple complexities at play here. The first complexity is that these defense contractors are booking tens of billions of dollars in revenue for defense contracts. Some of it is justified and some of it is absolute nonsense. Who knows? Who can decide? There is no one, because we don't even know how much money was spent on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. On top of that, what we find is that some of the businesses have absolutely exploded in stock price, and some of them have gone sideways. The deeper concentration you had in the defense industry, the higher the stock price went. If you had over 90% of your revenue coming from the defense industry, war is good for business, and those businesses took off. That is what is happening. And so now what we're seeing is hundreds of millions, maybe billions of dollars, maybe $1 trillion worth of defense equipment has been abandoned in a country that we spent the last 20 years trying to nation build. And now it has fallen into the hands of the Taliban. And what you ultimately find is that the government, for the most part, put up no fight from the Afghanistan perspective. The president fled, most people put down their guns, and the Taliban walked right in. There are people in Kabul right now who are literally on the tarmac trying to get on a plane to get their wives and their daughters or themselves out of that country. That is what true fear and evil looks like. And so what we have to remember is the business impact here almost doesn't matter. But at the same time that the business impact doesn't matter, the businesses have been popping. What do you guys think about seeing videos and photos of the Taliban literally posing like Instagram influencers in the presidential palace? And then they've got these drones, Humvees, helicopters, etc.
They're taunting us, right? Like, to some degree, they obviously think it's a joke, right? Like, I saw a video of them working out in the gym or whatever, and they're doing curls, doing all sorts of stuff, just ridiculous photos and images and videos coming out of there. But I think when you look at it, like, just look at the facts, right? The government's saying that we spent $800 billion. That's a joke. That's not even close to believable. No one, I don't think, in their right mind believes that that's actually how much we spent there. Most real estimates from economists and other organizations that study this stuff for a living estimate it was somewhere between anywhere from $2.5 trillion to $6 trillion. So significantly more than the government has admitted to spending. And then you just look at it from the perspective of where were we and where are we now, right? We entered 20 years ago and we leave 20 years later. We spent billions of dollars trying to build up their government and give them a democratic process. And we leave 20 years later with them having billions of dollars of equipment, not only military equipment, right? But they also, hundreds of thousands of people have died or been injured, both citizens within Afghanistan and U.S. military forces. and the Taliban is in charge again, right? So just from the simple perspective of like where we entered and where we are now, politics aside, you can always get into the purpose of it, who benefited, all this kind of stuff. But we're no better off necessarily than we were previously with people, the people that we left in charge and the system and the money that we spent.
Completely agree. Do they know how to operate that drone? Can they fly the helicopters?
No. These are gonna. I mean, they're gonna try.
It's no until they do it.
Yeah.
It's no until they learn.
Until you see it in the sky.
Until they're
and you're
trained
like, oh,
on
shit.
it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. To be fair, I don't think it's always no, and I think that there's probably some ways that they'll learn, that they'll teach themselves, or someone will be like that, stunt person to go and try it out. But I'm pretty certain there's no way one of them is picking that up and like intuitively figuring out how to work that thing.
A U.S. soldier
it's not
that's
an iPhone,
untrained.
yeah.
A U.S. soldier that's untrained isn't picking it up and flying it.
Yeah.
So definitely not here. Do we think about the idea of the Taliban being in control now? One of my fears is that other countries around the world, we already saw China step this up, start saying to Hong Kong, hey, when the U.S. says we stand with Hong Kong, they don't stand with shit. They abandoned their allies. They literally ran with their tail between their legs and got out of the country as fast as they could. And they literally left what's estimated to be 50,000 Afghans and their families who helped the United States during the last 20 years. Do we see adversarial countries start to step it up and say Hong Kong, Taiwan, et cetera, other countries like that, or other areas that are under immense pressure where the U.S. has protected them via this kind of U.S. Kind of military might? Does that bluff get called? Do we see China start to pressure Hong Kong and say the U.S. ain't coming? The U.S. doesn't stand with you, or Taiwan or something like that?
We could, right? Like, what have you done for me lately? If this is kind of the precedence that we're going to set, certainly. Yeah, it just depends, right? Like if someone's willing to call that bluff or not.
They're sitting in the president's palace on Al Jazeera holding American weapons after they just stormed their country.
Yeah.
The Taliban controls more of Afghanistan today than they did 20 years ago. That is a wild stat.
Not to mention everything that happened in between.
The Taliban controls more of Afghanistan today than they did 20 years ago. And we've spent trillions, at least, I don't care what they're saying, trillions on fighting this war. Thousands of Americans died. And there's a lot of people asking, why?
One thing I want to bring up is who's paying for it, right? So we talk about them spending trillions. They don't have an estimate. Of course, the U.S. estimate is super low, but the National Priorities Project has it at $5.4 trillion since 2001 that we've spent on war. That would mean that every hour, taxpayers in the United States are paying $32 million for war every hour. The U.S., the Pentagon itself, has stated in 2019 that through the fiscal year, so the U.S. government's fiscal year is from October 1st through September 30th. The Pentagon estimated that wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria have cost each taxpayer $7,700 in 2018. So each person paid $7,700 for war.
Hope you got your money's worth, right? I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, not to mention that the total debt per citizen is like $85,000, and the total federal tax income per citizen is like $11,000. So we're already at like a 3-to-1 deficit there.
The reason why I brought up the defense contractors, not only because nobody will go and talk about that on mainstream television, but two is I think it would be incredibly difficult to convince this generation of Americans to go to the next war, right? After they've seen what happened in Afghanistan and Iraq. If the U.S. government came to us and said, so-and-so, whatever country, whatever group, they're bad people, we're going to go to war. I don't think a lot of people would say, I like that idea. I don't think a lot of people would say, let's do it. I don't think a lot of people would say, let me send my son or daughter to the front lines. And so all of a sudden, I don't think that the defense industry is going to contract and going to get smaller. But I do think that these companies have a major tailwind in front of them in the fact that if you're not churning out Humvees and Black Hawk helicopters and drones and missiles and bullets and AR-15s, then what exactly are you going to be selling? Hey guys, thanks so much for watching that clip of the Best Business Show. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you know when we go live every weekday, and then head to SoFi.com/Pomp so that you can get an account and we can get after it.